if you get it. We are live. Hello, everyone. This is the Park Right Here podcast with Katrina and Tom and a lady I know and love, Miss Stacy Smith. She's my second cousin. She has graciously said she would come and be with us today. It was supposed to be my sister, but she got ill. So within the last 10 minutes, Stacy said, sure, I'll do it. So here she is to talk with us today about how Parkinson's affects family members. So, but I'll let Tom say his spiel, and then we'll go and let Stacy introduce herself.
Well, hi, I'm Tom Cosentino, as you guys know, the co-host of Park Right Here. What's interesting about today's session is Stacy, who is family with Katrina, really doesn't have a thorough knowledge of Parkinson's. So we've asked her to ask any questions that someone may have of Parkinson's patients. And what's really interesting is every Parkinson's person is different. I'm going to be 9 years next month, and my symptoms are vastly different than Katrina's. And if you put us all in the room together, they call us snowflakes because everybody is different. So that's from the public perspective. That sometimes makes Parkinson's a challenge because everyone, I think of Parkinson's, they think of Michael J. Fox, and they don't know that Parkinson's people, for the most part, I mean, we're still functionable. We can still do what we need to do, but they look at us differently because there is no one Parkinson's model. So with that being said, Stacy, feel free to ask any question that you want. We'll be open and honest. And if we don't want to be open and honest, maybe I'll try to make up a story instead.
Okay.
I'm a storyteller by nature.
Well, that's good. So, like Tom said, Katrina said, I'm Stacy Smith. I am Katrina's second cousin, and we grew up together a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So
we call that West Virginia, right?
It was actually in Virginia. It was It was pretty close to the West Virginia border on like the McDowell County side.
Yeah.
But it was still, I mean, if you drove for about 45 minutes, you would have been in West Virginia.
Okay.
Or 45 minutes south, you'll be in Tennessee.
Or could have driven
an hour
about
and
2 hours and been in Kentucky.
Wow, so that's pretty cool. You're like a couple hours away from all those states. I like that.
Yeah.
Kentucky bourbon, Tennessee whiskey, West Virginia hooch. It's all there.
It is. It's all there.
Yeah, actually, Stacy was born and raised in the town that I currently live in.
Ah.
So.
Well, I'm from the south side of Chicago. Me and Big Bad Leroy Brown.
And Jim, actually. So.
Oh, good. Now I know who to hit up for a deep dish pizza.
Oh, we'll talk about it. So, okay, tangent number one. Deep dish pizza, if you can't get into Chicago, Pizzeria Uno's, the franchise chain, they have a really decent, it's called the Chicago Famous. It's really good deep dish pizza. But when you get into Chicago, deep dish pizza has different meanings. So there's a place called Lou Mercati's who's got really good deep dish. There's Pizzeria Uno, but deep dish has got to be, the crust is like yay thick. But that's definitely worth going to if you can't get to Chicago. If you do get to Chicago, go to Portillo's for pit beef Italian beef sandwiches and sausage, and make sure you get a deep dish pizza. Enough talk about. Oh, and go to a Cubs game. Go to a Cubs.
Okay.
And I'm done.
We should do that and stay at Josh's once. That should be a girls' trip. Also, what was I gonna? Now I forgot what it is.
Hit us with the question.
Our game is to count how many tangents that Tom goes on.
So. One.
That's number one.
Yeah.
So, one question I'd like to ask both of you. It's obvious that Parkinson's disease can present itself very differently from one person to the next. But
Mhm.
what were the first indicators for each of you that something was going on and ended up being diagnosed as Parkinson's?
I'll yield ladies first.
Okay. For most people, there's actually, for the majority, if not all people, can tell you the date the symptoms started is
August 17th.
usually years before that they get diagnosed. There's usually a huge gap between when the symptoms started and their proper diagnosis. So my symptoms started, and this happens to be the same for me and Tom. There's actually been research done that the motor symptoms of Parkinson's will start about this around the same time that you lose a close family, someone close in your family. For me, it was 2011, not too long after my mom passed, and when my motor symptoms started. For me, it was my ring finger on my right hand started twitching at night, and I would have to like put it in a different position. Also, mom noticed what is called mask-like face, and apathy. It's beyond depression or anything. It's like where you just don't care, and I think that's not like me normally. It's
Yeah, it's not.
and that's one of the hardest ones for me. And the mask-like face, it's where mom noticed that she thought I was, of course, on too much drugs, on too much Ativan or something, too medicated.
I told you to quit taking 23 vitamins at the same time, Katrina.
And so I actually have to consciously think of smiling or, showing emotion on my face, which probably because I used to, be very emotive and very, you could pretty much tell my emotions from my face. And so then I was actually in school in 2011, and I started having memory issues to the point where I went from getting an anatomy physiology, what do you call it, lab, like doing the bones and stuff I already knew.
Mm-hmm.
But because in my original nursing classes in the 90s, I only took a 7-credit class, and I needed 8 credits. So I had to take the first part of it again. And I went from getting A's to F's. Nothing in between, not A's to B's to C's. I went A's to F's because my mind would just blank on something simple. And I was having trouble finding words, like simple words like purse or this or, book. It would get stuck between my brain and my mouth. So even now I'll pause when I'm talking because you probably know talking has never been difficult for me. And I think even Tom can tell you that.
It
And
makes me seem quiet.
so, but not being able to find a word was so frustrating. And then I started having trouble with my handwriting, which used to be very beautiful. But I would start writing and it would get smaller and smaller and more difficult. And I started having my right side would get heavy and slow. And every neurologist I went to, which was about 6 neurologists in Pennsylvania, they would all say it was my neck or my shoulder or something in my back. because of the I had already had a fusion in my lower back, so they would try to say it's something physical. But I said, no, there's something else going on because of my cognitive impairment. And nobody was listening. I even had a neurologist, I kid you not, tell me I was faking it to get attention. Needless to say, I had her fired. You know me, I don't tolerate doctors like that. So,
No place for stupidity.
I, well, first I complained about her at the office level. They kind of ignored it, and I said, I'll do it military like and to go chain of command. I went all the way to the top of the hospital, and I said, I was a nurse for almost 20 years by then, and I said, if you don't do something about it, I'm going to go to the press. I'm going to go to the Pennsylvania nursing board or medical board. I'll go wherever I have to go. If you don't do something about it, next thing you knew, that person had lost their job and their medical license. So, then we moved to Fort Belvoir, and I saw 2 more neurologists. Same thing. They wanted to give me an MRI, and I'm like, I hate MRIs. And Jim was working at executive medicine clinic, and so he had a little pull because he worked with a lot of generals and admirals, and with him being a former Marine, he had a little pull. So he walked up to the neurology department and said, I want my wife to be seen by the head of neurology. And I saw Dr. B. I don't remember his full name. And Dr. B had a group of students with him and had me walk down the hallway. And he goes, I think you have Parkinson's. I want you to do some more tests. He did, had me write and had me do memory things. He didn't test me anymore physically, but he tested me, cognitively. And he said the best way for me to diagnose you is to start you on Cinemet, the gold standard. That will start another, what's the word? Word finding. That will start another tangent with Tom. The gold standard. The gold standard is Cinemet because Cinemet has been around for 50 years.
Hate that term.
Mm-hmm.
I want the platinum standard.
I want the diamond standard.
Yeah.
Or adamantium.
And it's weird because I've heard a lot of stuff in the last couple days. But anyway, I'll get into that in a minute. And he goes, if Cinemet works on your symptoms, your physical symptoms, then you have Parkinson's. If not, then I think you have a form of Parkinsonism. And I'm like, Parkinsonism, I had never even heard of. And he said, Parkinsonisms are like Parkinson's, but they're a lot harder to treat, and they're much faster acting. And the fact that you would have young onset would be a positive thing because it's much slower, it's much, and it's easier to treat. So honestly, me and Jim, of course, were together, and I remember us both at the same time breathing a sigh of relief. I'm just saying, at least finally we know now what it is, and now we can fight it. And
Something you just said hit a nerve. I'm going to go grab something. You keep talking.
Okay. And I actually heard that Tuesday night at the Young Onset Parkinson Support Group, which is in Tennessee, Elizabethton, Tennessee, outside of Johnson City. They actually have a group of just young onset because a lot of support groups, well, if you can find one in our area, as you can imagine, it's hard to find resources out here. They wanted their own support group because it's hard for young onset sometimes to be around older people because young onset and regular onset work very differently and also progress like Keith. Keith has regular onset Parkinson's because he was 64, I think, when he got it. And it's really sad to watch him because he has progressed and he's so much farther ahead than me. His whole left side.
Did you say when he was 64?
How old is he now? Is he?
I don't know.
I think he's about the same age, or he's in between me and my mom. So let's see, I'm 50, but he's probably 65 now, and so
Yeah,
this was
that does sound about right.
so 2 years ago is when he was diagnosed. He doesn't know when his symptoms started. He's not very compliant on his meds. And I wish he would go with me to Charlottesville. I finally got him to switch from Bristol to Roanoke. Because I think a lot of his mental health stuff is related to Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had really good movement disorder doctors in Colorado, and Dr. Graber told me a lot of people will get diagnosed with severe mental health disorders like bipolar 2, like 10 to 20 years before the motor symptoms start with Parkinson's. And I did the genetic testing through 23andMe, which Dr. Graber said would have been the same genetic testing that he would have ordered. That would have cost about $400. And as he looked at the testing, and I don't have the genetic marker, just to let you know. I would like to see if Keith has the genetic marker. And I would like Keith to get better treatment because to see if he really has schizophrenia or really has bipolar, or if it's connected with Parkinson's. But he's as stubborn as the day is long.
He is, unfortunately, just like Opal was, cousin Opal.
Yeah. And like a lot of people back in this area, they don't want to see the doctor. They don't believe in the medicine.
You know, or they if they even go to the doctor, some people think, well, that's ridiculous. I couldn't have something like that. Or in a bad case, maybe they're not able to afford the medicine.
Right. That's true. And so.
But let me switch over to you, Tom, because I do also want to hear some of your story. What were your first symptoms and how did your diagnosis come about?
Before I jump into that, I just want to follow up what Katrina said about, so this is Cinemet or carbidopa levodopa. It's a little tablet. You can barely see it. It's so tiny. See if I can get a little bit closer. I take one every 3 hours. And what that does is called carbidopa levodopa. The carbidopa is coating, if you will, that because if you take levodopa directly, some people get very sick to their stomach because of the medicine. So carbidopa is like a protective cover, if you will, like a Bayer aspirin, so it doesn't irritate your stomach.
Ah,
So
okay.
based on your level of Parkinson's, depending on how much dopamine the brain has stopped, the cells, like Carl Sagan said, there are billions and billions of stars. In your brain, there's billions and billions of these little dopamine cells, which slowly die off because a portion of the brain just doesn't produce them anymore. It just stops making them. So what people do is they, for the most part, is they take the carbidopa levodopa. That seems to be, they call it the gold standard. And one of the side effects of that over a cumulative period of time is dyskinesia, which you can see Katrina has. So for me, my Parkinson's, I don't know if I take a lot or a little compared to other people, but this, I don't know if this is my little everyday, my little 5 times a day, I preload my pills so that I always have them at my ready. But so going back to quickly, my story is in the summer of 2015, we were on vacation, and I don't know if it was my son or my daughter, but one of them, I mean, my daughter or my wife, but one of them mentioned I'm not swinging my left arm. And that was the first sign, physical sign that it turned out that there was Parkinson's. Well, August 17th of 2015, unfortunately, my younger brother passed away from cancer. And I was there when he passed. And that day, I started having tremors in the left arm. Because as it turns out, the stress of my brother's death caused stresses to Parkinson's is like gasoline to a fire. It just makes everything worse. So for me, I was initially diagnosed as having what's called an essential tremor and a pinched nerve. And I started seeing a physical therapist. And I think a lot. I mean, I'm always thinking, and I couldn't justify or somehow rationalize in my head how at the same moment I would have a pinched nerve and essential tremor. So I knew I was talking to the neurologist or the physical therapist. He goes, I really think it could be Parkinson's. So with her help, I found a general neurologist, and then I found a specialist. Specialists are hard to get. First, there's not a lot of specialists. They're called movement disorder specialists. It's hard to find one because there's not that many of them. Mm-hmm. So the first neurologist I went to was a good neurologist. And I said to her, in the sense, I want to use you until I can get in to see the real movement disorder specialist. I didn't quite put it that way, but she was understanding, and she was the one who really diagnosed me with Parkinson's. And that was February 2016. And I remember that night coming home, and I was like kind of bummed out a little bit. And I'm watching TV Land because I just figure I'm going to watch Archie Bunker because I was in a really shitty mood. And I saw the first Archie Bunker episode, then another one came on, and I said, I'm going to watch one more show. And I swear, I don't want to say swear to God, Boy Scouts honor. The next show came on was the theme song to Michael J. Fox, Family Matters. And I just looked at this.
Family Ties.
Yeah, Family Ties. I'm sorry. I just looked at the ceiling and said, this ain't effing funny. And I turned the TV off. But so what she said about the dopamine, this is where I get frustrated is, and this is not for lack of effort. There are millions, if not billions of dollars being spent on research. We still don't know what causes it. We still don't know how to slow it down. We don't know how to cure it. All we know how to do is provide medications to maintain a better quality of life, if you will. And the drawback to that is what they call dopamine, the carbidopa levodopa, because what that better quality of life in the short term leads up to dyskinesia in the long term in most cases. Mm-hmm. And the people who have dyskinesia, the way to override that is they have deep brain surgery, which for those who really don't know is correct me if I'm wrong, but they cut 2 holes out in your skull. Mm-hmm. They stick these probes into a certain part of your brain. Mm-hmm. That's connected to a wire which runs down your neck into your shoulder, and you have like a pacemaker sewn into your chest. And what that does is that sends like a little electric little what's the word I'm looking for? Just little bits of electricity at those, and then overrides the cell that's causing you to do this. But then after time, that doesn't do the trick as well. And that's where you get into that vicious circle. And that's what I get frustrated about the gold standards, because there's over 100 different medications you can take for Parkinson's. And with the neurologist, he's basically his job is more or less to look at you, determine your symptoms, and of these 100 different kind of medications or more, try to come up with the best cocktail to manage your symptoms. It's frustrating, but I'm fortunate that I have a great neurologist. I've been with him for about 8.5 years now, and I can't say enough good things about him. But at the end of the day, all he can do is manage my symptoms.
Yeah.
And for me, to be honest, dyskinesia scares the hell out of me. So I'm actually on my own. I started cutting back on my meds, and I keep a sort of a journal of how it impacts me. And then when I meet with him in a couple of months, I want to tell him what I did and how the impact. Because what I'm not worried about so much, I'm not worried about taking less medication, because I know the medication is only managing my symptoms. So by taking less, I'm not slowing my progression. I'm not doing anything to myself other than possibly having slightly more symptoms. And it's like there's sometimes you have a choice between you want to have more tremors, or do you want to take the carbidopa levodopa with the possibility of having dyskinesia.
Yeah, because that's probably the first thing I will do is go and turn my brain down.
And this little pill is not carbidopa; it's actually a mint. So I don't want anybody to get too worried. It's going to be popping mints.
And this is Rytari that I take, which make sure my information's not being shown, which is carbidopa levodopa, but it's in capsule form and it's long acting. Because I also have gastroparesis, which is very common because everything in your body slows down. And because I have slow digestion, the Rytari works well for me. What frustrates me is, of course, pharmaceutical companies, because people who have insurance, I feel very guilty sometimes because I have TRICARE. So my copays at the most ever are $50 a month, no matter what the medication. So, but people with good insurance will pay $300 a month for this. And that, like, people have to take out grants and stuff to be able to take this. And my Ambrosia, which is powdered levodopa, and because it goes through the rest of it, it's an inhaler for off times. Like if I get dystonia, which is the opposite of dyskinesia, where you don't have enough dopamine going off in your brain, and my feet will cramp, and dystonia is very painful. It goes up the left side of my leg, because the nerves are going so fast that your muscles just cramp up really bad, and it goes into my shoulder to where my shoulder will like go up like this, and I can't put it down, and it goes into my neck, and I do get Botox for it, and I make a joke to Dr. D, who is my movement disorder specialist at UVA. I said, I'm going to have, because he puts the Botox in my feet and my ankles and my left calf, my left thigh, my shoulder, and my neck. I'm going to have the youngest looking feet. And then Jim made the joke that I should have an OnlyFans page. And I'm like, oh, you're funny. And but the Botox works because it, of course, relaxes the muscles. But also, when you have Parkinson's for whatever reason, and it's Dr. Graber said, for me, it's environmental exposure, which Lord only knows what that was, considering I grew up in the military. And the last 2 military bases I lived at, we lived right next to a German farm, and which could be the pesticides and all of that. and also highly nuclear. It has been proven that the Air Force used a special foam. I forgot the name of the foam, but they used it to put out jet fuel fires. And we had F-16 fighter jets in Germany and B-52s. And in Michigan, the Upper Peninsula, we had B-52s. And Dad told me, since both bases were closed down, he could tell me this now. And both of them were highly nuclear. There was a lot of nuclear weapons hidden up there in Michigan and in Germany. And so, Lord only knows what I was exposed to.
I want to follow up on something Katrina said on the medication. Katrina, if you don't mind me asking, what dosage of Ritari do you take?
I take the 48.75 of carbidopa and
And 195 of the other?
195 of levodopa.
And how many capsules how many do you take?
I take 4 at 6 a.m., 2 at 11
That's
a.m. That's 2 at 11 a.m., 2 at 4 p.m., and 4 at 9 p.m.
So you said 4, 2, 2, 2, and 4?
4, 2, 2, 4.
4. So that's 12 tablets a day.
Yes.
Now, with GoodRx, which is it would cost GoodRx, which is one of those over-the-counter discounts, it's $390 for that for 90 tablets. So if we did $390, I like doing math. $390 divided by 90 tablets, that's $4.33 a tablet. She's taking 12 a
Wow.
day. Without insurance, she'd be paying $52 a day for the Ritari. Now,
Wow.
as a comparison, the carbidopa levodopa, which is the difference between that and Ritari is that extended release. It's that coated tablet. But this is 11 cents per tablet. I take 5 a day. This costs me 55 cents a day versus $50 a day for her if she would have to pay over the counter. And I get this through GoodRx as well. There was a huge disparity in medication. And I know it costs more to produce a tablet like that, but that's the big thing. And for those people, if you're listening here, do your research. Check out online. You know, if you don't have insurance, or if your insurance, you can still use GoodRx and some. I use a mail order cattle or pharmacy as well to keep my medication costs under control. But that's the frustrating thing about the meds: 55 cents a day versus $50 a day. God knows if you don't have insurance, how you can afford to do that. But what I do with my Cinemet is I used to take 1.5, 4 times a day. And I started having those like off times when it started to wear off. Like when you take your dopamine in the morning, you get this little peak of dopamine and then it starts to decline. Like about every 3 hours, I'm going like up hour and a half, down an hour and a half, up an hour, down an hour, back and forth. But by taking it, instead of taking it once every 4 hours, I'm sorry, instead of taking 1.5 every 4 hours, I'm taking 1 every 3 hours. So I'm in essence making Ritari because I'm giving myself less Ritari over longer or shorter period of time, and it sort of evens out a little bit. Mm-hmm. That's something. If you're listening to this, talk to your neurologist. If you can't afford your medication, there's 100 different medications you can take for Parkinson's. Something's got to work for you, and not put you in bankruptcy or have to take out an equity line of credit on your house.
And also, one thing I can tell you from working as a nurse, outpatient mental health, we had indigent clients or clients who are homeless and didn't have insurance. Every pharmaceutical company has a program for people who don't have insurance or who are low income. They have a way you can get your medication. It's different companies require different information. Sometimes it's just filling out a form, having your prescription from your doctor, and they'll send it to your house. Now, for our indigent clients, we would have it sent to our clinic, and we had file cabinets upon file cabinets where we had their medication, because that usually made sure that they would come for their follow-up visits. But I had to fight with some companies because they would want tax returns, and how to get tax returns for homeless people. So I was always that one nurse. What's his name from Together for Sharon is on.
By the way, like a little moment for a paid commercial. Absolutely. But this is George Ackerman, who wrote this book called His Son's Journey. He was his mother's caretaker for Parkinson's. This is a must-read book. If you want to really understand what it takes to be a care partner for somebody with Parkinson's, get this book. You can get it on Amazon, A Son's Journey, and it's well worth reading.
It is amazing book. He's been a guest on our podcast, and we were recently a guest on his podcast.
And just a plug for George is this man never sleeps. He's Parkinson's advocacy 24/7.
And he's a lawyer and a police officer.
He's done it all. I don't know when the man sleeps, but I digress. That's tangent number 3, by the way. So I'm keeping track for those at home.
And Tom, for those off episodes, since it came out and the pharmaceuticals reps were giving out samples, I want to make sure my stickers. Okay. And Bresia is the inhaler. There we go. And what it is powdered levodopa inhaler. And I remember I was the first one at UC Health, Colorado Springs, and Denver to take this medication. I came in because Jim was deployed at the time, so I came in on an Uber because I didn't take my nighttime medicine, my morning medicine, and boy, was I off. I even shocked my doctor because he had never really seen me off my medicine. And I'm just going to show you what it looks like because I've never done this on the podcast. So you get 2 little capsules for each dose. And let's see how many capsules are in here totally. There are 60 capsules. So 30 doses. And I was told, because I would get this in the military, when it first came out, nobody had it. Walmart didn't have it. The people who supplied the pharmacy at Fort Carson, they didn't have it. But I had an amazing pharmacist who went straight to the pharmaceutical company and got it for me until it was readily available. And one of the pharmacy techs asked me, what is that medication used for? And I said, it's used for Parkinson's and it's like a rescue inhaler. And they go, she tried to touch it once and they told her, don't touch that. That box is worth $5,000. I'm like, what? Oh, don't get me started on pharmaceutical companies and how much it costs. So you have this, take the lid off, and it's very easy, even when I have dyskinesia or my bradykinesia where I'm very slow. I can still twist it off where it separates. Yeah, I'm not going to take it right now because I'm having a little too much dopamine as it is, and putting more dopamine would.
And while she's doing that, I just want to emphasize Katrina and I are not doctors. We're not
Nope.
pharmacists. We're just trying to share information. Please, please don't do anything anyone ever tells you unless you check with your neurologist. You know, everybody means well, but as we said in the beginning, everyone's Parkinson's is different. What works for me may not work for you.
Right.
Matter of fact, just the other day, ironically, my neighbor has Parkinson's, and he was taking one of the Parkinson's medications, which causes his blood pressure to spike. And he actually went to the emergency room. Now, that's something, if you ask him what he thinks of that meds, he'd probably say, I hate it. But it wasn't perhaps the right med for him. So again, I'm just going to please beg people, talk to your neurologist.
Always talk to your doctor first.
Yeah.
I was a nurse. I'm not a licensed nurse anymore, so I speak as a layman Parkinson's patient with some experience, and that's how Tom speaks to as a person with experience, and just our experiences, what we've learned. And it was the funny part of this was, and I kid you not, the first time I took this, I started coughing really, really bad. And that's one of the reasons people will not, they'll be prescribed this, but they won't take it because it makes them cough so bad. And the first thing I asked the nurse that was with me, I'm like, can you drink water with this? Can you, take some water and then take the, then take the first inhalation? And she looked through the information and it didn't say anything about water. So I always take a good sip of water, or a good gulp of water, make sure it gets through the back of my throat. And then I take little puffs because the information and the instructions said to take one big puff. I just take 2 to 3 little puffs, and then I take it out, put the other capsule in, and do the same that way. And last year, I met a rep from Ambresia at a event in Charlottesville, and I was there for Davis Finney Foundation. And he asked me to show him how to use Ambresia because he had never seen it used in person before. And I'm like, I thought that was weird, but I showed him. And I asked him about that, and he said that this year, which would have been 2023, and it came out in 2018, they were changing the instructions on it to say, take water and take small puffs. I'm like, I have been trying to tell him that for since 2018. So it took him that long to listen to me. And he goes, oh, so you're that Katrina. Like, he knew who I was. Because I had been talking to people and writing emails to Ambresia. And then it come to find out the company who originally came out with Ambresia, they went bankrupt, and now another company has picked it up. So I heard that through the grapevine.
That's true.
And so I ordered as much as I possibly could. So I've got 6 boxes in the closet. So just in case something happens. But yeah, it's my frustration is I don't what on CareRx, what does Ambrosia cost?
Ooh, let me take a look, see here.
So what other questions, or I'm also interested, Stacy, in
Hey, stupid quick. How do you spell Ambrosia? Make sure I'm spelling this right.
INB as in boy, RIJA.
Okay, let's see if it comes up.
If Parkinson's, if you have noticed any changes in our relationship, or how it has impacted you.
Oh, so Ambrosia is a limited distribution medication. They do not have it, which means it's extremely expensive.
Okay, that doesn't look right. But speaking for families, because I know with Jim and Erica, my daughter, and my son John, like I have.
Ooh, ooh, are you sitting down?
Mm-hmm.
So this is, I just Googled Ambrosia cost.
Mm-hmm.
For 60 units, it's $21 per unit or $1,300 for the case.
Mm-hmm.
So you better put that under lock and key because anybody listening to this may come to your house and try to get it.
So, Stacy, speaking for our relationship and families, how do you feel about having a close family member with Parkinson's, and how has it changed your perspective on Parkinson's?
Does it make the week or the holidays better when she's there?
Well, from a family member's perspective who, I didn't know much about Parkinson's before Katrina was diagnosed. I still only have a basic knowledge, and that is abstract because I'm on the outside looking in. I don't have it. The only thing I have to go by is, like seeing Katrina, seeing other people with Parkinson's and how it affects them. It's kind of like any other illness or disease in the world. I'm sad that it exists. I'm glad that there are treatments for it that can help. Katrina is such a big, I respect her so much, and she is such an inspiration, I think, as, someone who has it, and, her symptoms may be, worse than other people's, but she still does everything she can, to spread awareness and help learn about it. I appreciate everything I've learned about it from her. I do see, how it affects her. And I don't want to be dishonest on here, but it is a little, it's a little saddening
It
for
is.
someone to have something like this,
Well, I just want to throw a few things out because I know we're running short on time. If you're in the listening audience and you don't really know much about Parkinson's, there are so many websites, but I caution people. Michael J. Fox is a great website. The Davis Finney Foundation, Parkinson's Foundation, American Parkinson's Disability Association, major hospitals like the Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, University of Maryland. There's so much bad information out there that you got to focus in on the better of the two. And I'm a very big advocate on making sure that you advocate for yourself and you educate yourself. You can't really see this, but this is what's called the pro diet. This is a diet they found that's helpful to people with Parkinson's. There's things you should eat and shouldn't eat. This is a little paper on exercise I just downloaded the other day, how exercise impacts Parkinson's. And this is just something that follows along with. These are exercises they recommend for you. I like to call it the 4 pillars of truths in a sense with Parkinson's. You got to find a great neurologist. And if you can't find a movement disorder specialist, find a neurologist who actually has Parkinson patients. You got to start exercising 3 times a week, a half hour. If you can exercise 3 times a week for a half hour of high intensity exercises, you will delay the progression of Parkinson's. That's been proven. Start a diet. Make sure you're eating healthy. Generically, if you do the Mediterranean diet, you can't go wrong, because certain foods may worsen the Parkinson's, certain foods may help the Parkinson's. Plus, being healthy is better than not being healthy. And finally, if you can, find a good support group, because you can't do this alone. There's just too much that you need to learn, too much done, and it's too much to hold to yourself, you know. Mm-hmm. And to that matter, that's the 4 things I want to say at the end. You know, in one respect, you got to look. We look at it differently. We're individuals who happen to have Parkinson's. Almost the same as saying we're individuals who happen to have cancer or happen to have fill in the blank. Parkinson's is not who we are. It doesn't define who we are. It's just something that we have and something we deal with.
Yeah, and like Stacy said, it's with me being a nurse for 20 years, it was very difficult to admit to myself that I wasn't going to be able to be a nurse anymore, because that's what I've always wanted to be. Like in the 70s, I had those little plastic doctor kits, and I would take everybody's blood pressure and all of that stuff. And in high school, I was a Red Cross volunteer. I always wanted to actually be an OB nurse practitioner. And I had to go to therapy and go through the grieving process of losing my nursing career, because it was like losing a part of myself. So, like I was texting Tom earlier today, I still go through stuff. I still go through crap at home, internal and external. But being able to help others, because I'm a person of faith, I feel is what God has given me, my way to have that nursing spirit and help. Well, I guess I put it the best way when I was talking to the group in Tennessee. They were telling me thank you because I told them information they didn't know, and telling them they're not alone, and I could understand a lot of their symptoms, because with them being young onset, a lot of our symptoms were similar. And they kept thanking me. And I said, no, I want to thank you because you've helped me. Because helping others helps me feel better and helps me not think about my stuff so much and gives me a purpose. And
Mhm.
it's very important whether you have any chronic illness, whether it's Parkinson's or cancer or whatever you struggle with, you need to find that purpose in life. Whatever you can do to make a difference in somebody else's life,
Mhm.
because it will help you so much get outside yourself and not think about the hard times you're going through or the crap you have to deal with from others. And if only one person who listens to this podcast gets that, even though I know a lot of people listen.
I'm going for 2 people. I want to double that.
I know this podcast touches a lot of people because of the way I need to streamline it somehow. But I put it on all the Facebook groups, which is now almost 200. And I put it out through.
That's fantastic. There are that many support groups.
Mm-hmm.
And now the support group I was talking out, that I was talking out on Tuesday actually found me through the podcast. And that's where they invited me, because the leader had seen our podcast and nobody knew anything about David Finney. So, but I brought everybody a book, and every Victory Counts book, and I told them about APDA, and I think I got definitely one guy who was newly diagnosed, and he's definitely going through the thing with his career because he was a pilot and an officer.
Mm.
And he's not medically retiring because it would have taken the same amount of time to medically retire as it would have to retire at 30 years. And he actually worked for acquisitions at the Pentagon after they took his flight status and said he couldn't fly anymore because of, can't fly with Parkinson's.
It's kind of hard to hold the steering wheel in the plane when you're like this.
Yep. So, he has a lot of connections, and he's very interested in being an ambassador because there's only one ambassador for the state of Tennessee. I tried to get a hold of her, but she didn't get in touch with me back.
Excuse me.
So it was interesting to get in connection with them through the podcast. And also I go through Buzzsprout, which takes the podcast and puts it on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Castbox, all those other, iHeart, Amazon. And then Spotify has a separate Spotify for podcasters we're pretty big on Spotify and Apple, and um, one YouTube. And when this goes out live, it actually goes out live on my Facebook, Tom's Facebook, and our YouTube page. So, and we're slowly getting more and more subscribers. So I ask everybody who sees this, please go and subscribe to Park Right Here podcast on YouTube. And we also have Park Right Here podcast Facebook page, Instagram page, and Twitter, or otherwise known as Twitter, now called X. Because we want to reach more people, and we do have more plans.
Hey, one of my jobs is to try to be the timekeeper. We've been going on for about a little over an hour now. We like to try to keep it about an hour. So I just want to say, Stacy, appreciate it. Hopefully you leave with a little better understanding of Parkinson's. And for those people who see this or listen to this, just remember, we don't have Parkinson's. It's just something that we deal with. And I want to thank everybody
Absolutely.
for coming. And thank you very much for being here.
And
maybe at some point in the future I could come back and ask a few more questions.
Absolutely. Return fee is only $25, so that'll be fine.
Okay, well that's good.
We'll
I'll go dig some cash out from under the mattress.
There you go. Well, thanks for stopping by today, and thanks for all your questions, and thanks for your interest.
Thank you. Thank
And
you all so much.
let me know how Thanksgiving goes, especially if she cuts the turkey. Who wants to slice it?
I'll actually
will.
cook. I'll actually
Bye.
cook the turkey, which will actually be scarier. So
Well, it's just you and I, so
Yep.
just want to thank you for your time. And again, thank you for doing what you did today, especially considering your dyskinesia was a little bit worse.
Okay. We're still live.
Yeah.
But we want to thank everybody for their support, and please look for us coming out with new content and on YouTube. And thanks to everyone who's sent encouragement and support. And I could apologize for my dyskinesia, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
And I just want everybody to know that you're not alone. And even with dyskinesia, you can still do what you need to do, and you can still make a difference. So never give up.
Never give up. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
Especially when you have great friends like Tom.
Well, maybe good friend. I wouldn't go so much say great, but thank you. Same here.
Take it easy. See you next week. Have a wonderful week.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Push the button.